Nine. We have go for main engine start. We have main engine start. Minus 3, 2, 1. We have ignition. We have ignition of the solid rocket booster and liftoff. Liftoff of America's space shuttle, and the space shuttle has cleared the tower. 7, 6. We have main engine start. 9, 8, 7, 6. We have main engine ignition. 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have solid motor ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of America's space shuttle on its fourth mission, and we have cleared the tower. 10, we are go for main engine ignition. 7, 6. We have main engine ignition. 3, 2, 1. And solid motor ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of the first operational space shuttle mission with 2 satellites on board, and the shuttle has cleared the tower. 10, we are go for main engine ignition. 7, 6, we have main engine ignition. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. Liftoff of the orbiter Challenger and the 6th flight of the space shuttle. The shuttle has cleared the tower. 9, 8, 7, 6. We go for main engine start. We have main engine start and ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of STS-7 and America's first woman astronaut. 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. We have engine start. 2, 1. We have ignition and we have liftoff. Liftoff 32 minutes after the hour, and the shuttle has cleared the tower. 7, 6. We have main engine start. 3, 2, 1. Solid motor ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of Columbia and the first flight of the European Space Agency Space Lab.
We have a go for main engine start. 6, 5. We have main engine start. 3, 2, 1. 0. We have solid rocket booster ignition and liftoff of Challenger and the 10th space shuttle flight. The shuttle has cleared the tower.
6. We have main engine start. 3, 2, 1. Solid motor ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of Challenger and the first flight to repair a satellite in space. We have cleared the tower.
We have a go for main engine start. 6. We have main engine start. 3, 2, 1. We have SRB ignition and we have liftoff. Liftoff of mission 41D, the first flight of the orbiter Discovery, and the shuttle has cleared the tower. 9, 8, go for main engine start. 7, 6. We have main engine start. 5, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have SRB ignition and the history's largest astronaut crew is on its way. 6. We have main engine start. 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of Discovery and the first flight to retrieve and return satellites from space, and the shuttle has cleared the tower. We have a go for main engine start. 7, 6, and we have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. We have SRB ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of mission 51D and the 7-member crew of Discovery.
Main engine start. 6. We have main engine start. All 3 engines up and running. 3, 2, 1, 0. SRB ignition and Challenger and Space Lab 3 is airborne and has cleared the tower. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of Discovery. We have go for engine start. T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ignition and liftoff. We have liftoff of Challenger and Space Lab 2. The shuttle has cleared the tower.
9, we have a go for main engine start, and we have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of A-51I and the commercial deploy and repair mission. It has cleared the tower. 11, 10, have go for main engine start. T-minus 6, we have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of Atlantis. A new orbiter joins the shuttle fleet and it has cleared the tower.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of Challenger and the Space Lab B1 mission. And the shuttle has cleared the tower.
Have a go for main engine start. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. Liftoff of the space shuttle, and it has cleared the tower.
T-minus 10, go for engine start. T-minus 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have ignition and we have liftoff. Liftoff of Columbia in mission 61C, and the shuttle has cleared the tower.
7, 6, we have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the 25th Space Shuttle mission, and it has cleared the tower. Go for main engine start. 7, 6, we have main engine start. 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. Liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the tower. 11, 10, we have a go for main engine start. 7, 6, we have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, ignition and liftoff. Atlantis begins another space voyage as it clears the tower.
11, 10, we have a go for main engine start. 6, 5, we have main engine start. 3, 2, 1, SRB ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of STS-29 as Discovery clears the tower.
We have a go for main engine start. 7, 6, we have main engine start. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. Planetary science begins as Atlantis clears the tower.
We have go for main engine start. 7, 6, go for main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff on Columbia and its return to flight.
10, 9, we have a go for main engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have ignition and liftoff of Atlantis and the Galileo spacecraft bound for Jupiter.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, liftoff. Liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery.
We have a go for main engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Booster ignition and liftoff of Columbia. A new decade of spaceflight begins.
From the tower, hand over to Houston complete.
10, 9. We have a go for main engine start. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Ignition and liftoff of Atlantis and mission STS-36.
T-minus 10, go for main engine start. We are go for main engine start. T-minus 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery with the Hubble Space Telescope, our window on the universe.
We have a go for main engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff of Discovery and the Ulysses spacecraft bound for the polar regions of the sun. We have a go for main engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of Atlantis and crew in the classified Department of Defense flight.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3 good engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. Liftoff of the Space Shuttle Columbia and Astro 1 for an insight into the lifestyle of the galaxies. 7, 6, 5, main engine start. 3 good engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Atlantis and the Gamma Ray Observatory, seeking out the explosive forces of the universe.
Go for main engine start. We have engine start. 3, 2, 1. We have ignition and liftoff of Discovery on a research flight for the Department of Defense.
Houston is now controlling. Roll maneuver is underway.
4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Atlantis on a 9-day mission to deploy the TDRS communication satellite.
7, go for main engine start. 3 main engines up and burning. 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery and the Upper Atmosphere Research Satellite into a new era studying the Earth's environment from space.
11, 10, 9. We have a go for engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff of Atlantis and the 6-man crew on a Department of Defense flight.
10, 9, 8, 7. We have a go for main engine start. We have 3 main engines up and running. 3, 2, 1, 0. And liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery and the first International Microgravity Laboratory.
Houston is now controlling. Discovery and crew are rolling on course.
Roll program. Roger, roll, Discovery.
We'll go for main engine start. 6, 5, main engine start. 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Atlantis on a mission to planet Earth.
T-minus 10. We have a go for engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of the maiden voyage of Endeavour on a satellite rescue mission.
A go for main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And liftoff of the Space Shuttle Columbia and the first extended duration mission, a stepping stone to Space Station Freedom.
9, 8, 7, 6, 5, main engine ignition, all 3 engines up and burning. 2, 1, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Atlantis on a mission for new utility in space.
Let's go for main engine start.
We have main engine start. 2, 1. Solid rocket ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of Endeavour on America's 50th space shuttle flight.
We have a go for engine start. 3, 2, 1. We have ignition and liftoff of Columbia on an ambitious 10-day international research flight.
7. We have a go for main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And liftoff. Liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery on a 7-day mission for the Department of Defense.
6, main engines up and running. 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff. Liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour with NASA's newest tracking station in the sky.
We have a go for engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have ignition. We have liftoff of Discovery on the second mission to Planet Earth research flight.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Solid rocket ignition and liftoff. Liftoff of Columbia on a voyage to the future.
7. We have a go for main engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour on the first space mission and the retrieval of the Eureka spacecraft.
6. Go for main engine start. Engines are up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery, launching the next generation of communication satellite technology.
Yeah, let's go for main engine start.
T-minus 6, 5, 4. We have main engine start. 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Columbia on a life sciences mission for Earth and space.
11, 10, 9, and we have a go for main engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we have liftoff. Liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour on an ambitious mission to service the Hubble Space Telescope.
9, 8. We have a go for engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery on a bold new era of spaceflight between the United States and Russia.
We have a go for main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the Space Shuttle Columbia as NASA continues on the cutting edge of microgravity research.
7, 6, main engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour, observing the changes of planet Earth.
Having it. Here we go. Let's go for main engine start. Let's see, 3 and 4. Roger that. Houston, Columbia, roll program.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, main engine start. 3 engines up and burning. 2, 1, liftoff of Space Shuttle Discovery, developing new techniques to monitor our Earth's environment from space.
Engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour on a mission to study the Earth's ever-changing environment.
10, 9, 8, 7. We are go for main engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Atlantis on a mission to study planet Earth.
Main engines now started. Engines up and running. 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Discovery on a mission to prepare for the next era of world cooperation in space.
We have a go for main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of Endeavour on a voyage to view the universe.
We have 3 main engines up and running. 2, 1, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Atlantis on a mission that will herald a new day of international cooperation in space.
Houston now controlling.
Houston,
13 seconds. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. Main engine ignition. 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Discovery to complete NASA's constellation of tracking stations in the sky.
We have a go for engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Endeavour on the 71st flight of the Space Shuttle on a multifaceted mission.
10, 9, 8, 7. We have a go for main engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff. Liftoff of the Space Shuttle Columbia, catapulting scientific knowledge through microgravity research. 7. Go for main engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis with the Russian docking module, the threshold to world cooperation in space.
10, 9, 8. We have a go for engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Endeavour in pursuit of a Japanese satellite.
9, 8, 7. We have a go for main engine. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have liftoff of the Space Shuttle Columbia, continuing space research through tether satellite technology.
The shock of the 7 million pounds of thrust. 9. We have a go for engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Atlantis on the third shuttle mirror docking flight.
Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour to develop the practical and the beneficial aspects of space.
Start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And we have liftoff of the Space Shuttle Columbia on an international-wide science and microgravity mission.
Houston now controlling the flight of Columbia.
T-minus 10, 9, 8. We have a go for engine start. 5, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of Atlantis on the fourth flight to dock with the Russian space station.
Ignition sequence start. 7, 6, 3 main engines up and burning. 2, 1, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia on a diversified mission of astronomy and commercial space research.
T-minus 10, 9, 8. We have a go for main engine start. We have main engines up and running. 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Atlantis on a 10-day mission to dock with Russia's orbiting outpost.
8, 7. We have a go for engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff. Discovery now on its way to service NASA's Hubble Space Telescope.
10, 9, 8, 7. Ignition sequence start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia with the Microgravity Science Laboratory, our research bridge to the space benefits of tomorrow.
10, 9, 8, 7. We have a go for main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Atlantis, maintaining America's constant presence in space.
10, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Main engine start. 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of Columbia with the Microgravity Science Laboratory, a research bridge to the International Space Station.
10, 9, 8. We have a go for main engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery on a mission to study planet Earth.
10, 9, 8, 7. We have a go for main engine. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Atlantis, extending America's presence in space while opening new chapters in exploration.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Main engine start. 5, 3, 2, 1, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia on a mission combining science and the practical aspects of space.
Roll program. Roger, roll, Columbia.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6. We have a go for main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour, continuing the union of U.S. and Russian space endeavors.
9, 8, 7. Go for main engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia on a mission expanding our knowledge and understanding of the human nervous system.
7. We have a go for main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. 0. We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery as NASA embarks on the final mission to dock with Russia's space station Mir.
We have a go for engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery with a crew of 6 astronaut heroes and 1 American legend.
10, 9, 8. We have a go for main engine start. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour with the first American element of the International Space Station uniting our efforts in space to achieve our common goals.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Discovery on the first mission to dock with the orbiting International Space Station. And the vehicle has cleared the tower.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3. We have a go for engine start. 0. We have booster ignition and liftoff of Columbia, reaching new heights for women in X-ray astronomy.
10, 9, 8, 7. We have a go for main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery on a mission to repair the Hubble Space Telescope as we venture into the 21st century.
10, 9, 8, 7. We have a go for main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Space Shuttle Endeavour on a 21st century mission, placing Earth back on the map.
6. Main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis, a space shuttle for the 21st century.
Go for main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Atlantis, opening the door to a permanent human presence in space.
10, 9, 8, 7. We have a go for main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery, making shuttle history and building our future in space.
10, 9, 8. We have a go for main engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour, providing power to the station as we continue to build our future in space.
Go for main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis with Destiny, a science laboratory for the 21st century.
11, 10, 9, 8, 7. Go for main engine start. 3, 2, booster ignition, liftoff of Discovery and a team of explorers shaping their destiny.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour, extending the reach of the space station while extending partnerships above the Earth.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis, launching a door to partnerships in space.
Houston now controlling the flight of Atlantis.
6. We have engine start. 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery, carrying the 3rd crew of astronaut residents to the International Space Station.
Go for main engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour, pushing our goals skyward using our station in space.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia to broaden our view of the universe through the Hubble Space Telescope.
Go for main engine start. 6, 5, 4,
3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Atlantis, setting in place the keystone to the space station's backbone. Go for main engine start. 5, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Endeavour, extending our reach while expanding our research in space. 11, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. We have both main engine start. 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Atlantis, building the station and our future in space.
Houston now controlling the flight of Atlantis.
Roger, roll, Atlantic.
Atlantis into the roll, the external tank camera, placing the shuttle in a heads-down wings level position for that 8.5-minute ride to orbit.
6. Go for main engine start. 4, 2, 1, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Endeavour with another building block for the foundation of the International Space Station.
11, 10, 9, 8, 7. We have a go for main engine start. 5, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of Space Shuttle Columbia with a multitude of national and international space research experiments.
T-minus 10 seconds. Go for main engine start. 7, 6, 5. 3 engines up and burning. 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Discovery, beginning America's new journey to the moon, Mars, and beyond. And the vehicle has cleared the tower.
Discovery drawing onto the course for rendezvous with the International Space Station.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6. Go for main engine start. Main engine start. 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery, returning to the space station, paving the way for future missions beyond.
Minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. 3 main engines up and burning. 2, 1. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis, opening a new chapter in the completion of the International Space Station for the collaboration of nations in space.
10 seconds. We have a go for main engine start. 6, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have booster ignition and liftoff of the Space Shuttle Discovery, lighting up the nighttime sky as we continue building the International Space Station.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7. Main engine start. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis to assemble the framework for the science laboratories of tomorrow. Start. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Endeavour, expanding the International Space Station while creating a classroom in space.
Start.
We have a go for main engine start. T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery, hoisting harmony to the heavens and opening new gateways for international science. Discovery has cleared the tower.
Go for main engine start. 7, 6. Main engine ignition. 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis as Columbus sets sail on a voyage of science to the space station. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. And liftoff of Endeavour, going where east and west do meet at the International Space Station.
10 seconds. We have go for main engine start. 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Shuttle Discovery. Combate Kudasai. Best of luck to the International Space Station's newest laboratory.
7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition. and liftoff of Space Shuttle Endeavour, preparing our home in space for a larger international family. 10.
Let's go for main engine start.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And booster ignition and liftoff of Space Shuttle Discovery, taking the space station to full power for full science.
Nozzle check of the SRBs. Firing chain is armed. Sound suppression water system armed. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5.
We're go for main engine start. We have main engine start. 4, 3, 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Endeavour, completing Kibo and fulfilling Japan's hope for an out-of-this-world space laboratory.
10. CLS is go for main engine start.
We have a go for main engine start. Main engine start. 2, 1. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery, celebrating its 25th birthday by racking up science and supplies to the space station.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 3, 2, 1, 0, and liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis on the mission to build, resupply, and to do research on the International Space Station.
Houston now controlling. Atlantis begins its penultimate journey to shore up the International Space Station.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. We have go for main engine start. 2, 1, 0. Booster ignition and liftoff of Shuttle Endeavour with NASA's final space station crew compartment that brings a bay window view to our celestial backyard.
We have a go for main engine start. 3 engines up and ready. 3, 2, 1, 0. Booster ignition and liftoff of Discovery, blazing a trail to scientific discoveries aboard space station.
11, 10, 9, 8. Go for main engine start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And 0 and liftoff of Space Shuttle Atlantis, reaching the crest of its historic achievements in space.
Houston, Atlantis is in a roll.
Go for main engine start. We have main engine start. 2, 1. Booster ignition and the final liftoff of Discovery, a tribute to the dedication, hard work, and pride of America's space shuttle team. The shuttle has cleared the tower.
This is Mission Control Houston. The space shuttle now rolling over onto its back with a 7-minute ride into orbit. Discovery now making one last reach for the stars.
6, 4, 3, 2, 0, and liftoff for the final launch of Endeavour, expanding our knowledge, expanding our lives in space.
Houston, Endeavour, roll program.
Roger, roll, Endeavour.
Go for main engine start. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5. All 3 engines up and burning. 2, 1, 0, and liftoff, the final liftoff of Atlantis on the shoulders of the space shuttle. America will continue the dream.
Roger, roll, Atlantis.
Houston now controlling the flight of Atlantis. The space shuttle spreads its wings one final time for the start of a sentimental journey into history. 24 seconds into the flight, roll program complete. Atlantis now heads down, wings level on the proper alignment for its 8.5-minute ride to orbit. 4.5 million pounds of hardware and humans taking aim on the International Space Station. 40 seconds into the flight, the 3 liquid fuel main engines throttling back to 72% of rated performance in the bucket, reducing stress on the shuttle as it goes transonic for the final time. Engines now revving up, standing by for the throttle up call.
Hey Elonites, welcome to the Tesla Space, where we share the latest news, rumors, and insights into all things Tesla, SpaceX, and Elon Musk. Nothing seems to amaze the masses like a rocket launching into space, and in 2020, SpaceX conducted 23 launches and has surpassed 100 launches for the company's history. That's a lot of rockets. Today, we are coming back to SpaceX for a look at their history of rocket launches from their first flight of the Falcon 9 to their human space flights in 2020 and every launch in between. That's right. Today, we're doing the ultimate SpaceX launch compilation, showcasing every SpaceX rocket launch we can find and highlighting their top 10 most significant and newsworthy launches. It's going to be a real fun one to watch, so make sure to stick around, hit that thumbs up button, and let's get into it. June 4th, 2010, the first orbital flight of the Falcon 9. Defying questionable odds and technical gremlins, the Falcon 9 rocket completed a nearly flawless first flight in June of 2010, successfully hitting a bullseye 155 miles high in space after a drama-filled countdown and launch. The historic spaceflight was initially delayed by connectivity issues and a last-second pressure glitch that pushed the liftoff back to nearly the end of their 4-hour launch window. The second stage of the rocket achieved its goal of a 155-mile high orbit with a mock Dragon capsule as its payload. This was the launch that first proved SpaceX were up to the task of delivering payloads into Earth's orbit, a goal that Elon and his team of engineers had been working towards for 8 years prior. After the successful launch, Elon called it one of the greatest days of his life. December 8th, 2010, first flight of the Dragon capsule. This launch saw the first ever real-world test of the Dragon capsule in space. After being delivered into orbit by a Falcon 9 rocket, the capsule separated and began hours of thruster testing and maneuvering in space. After completing its tests, the capsule began its re-entry and parachuted safely into the Pacific Ocean off the coast of California. This successful test cast aside any doubts that SpaceX would be able to deliver on their promise of viable transportation to and from the International Space Station. At the time, President of SpaceX Gwynne Shotwell said, "We're beyond the question of is it possible? We did it, and now we move on." May 22nd, 2012, first cargo delivery to the International Space Station. The head of NASA hailed a new era in exploration after the launch of the first SpaceX Cargo Dragon delivery to the space station. After a 2-day flight to the station, the Dragon capsule performed a series of demonstrations of its guidance, control, and communication systems before it was allowed to drive within 10 meters of the station, where it was grabbed with a robotic arm and docked. This was a major win for SpaceX as the first private company to achieve the feat of reaching the space station. It was also a significant event for NASA, who had made the controversial decision to end their own space flights in hopes that the private sector would be able to provide that service for them. And a little fun fact, the Falcon 9 used in this flight also carried the cremated remains of Scotty from Star Trek, which were released into orbit around the Earth. September 29th, 2013, the first commercial mission with a private customer. This was the first launch using version 1.1 of the Falcon 9 rocket and also the first commercial delivery mission for SpaceX. The Falcon rocket successfully delivered the Canadian Cassiope spacecraft and 5 nanosats into orbit. This was also the first time that first stage rocket engines were refired on descent in an attempt to bring them down for a controlled landing into the ocean. It didn't really work, but this was the first known attempt of a rocket engine being lit to perform a supersonic retropropulsion and allowed SpaceX to enter a public-private partnership with NASA and its Mars entry, descent, and landing technologies research projects. April 18th, 2014, the first controlled touchdown of a rocket engine. This flight was the third cargo Dragon delivery to the International Space Station, the first flight of a Dragon capsule on the Falcon 9 version 1.1, and the first time that the first stage rocket booster made a controlled return to Earth. The first stage of the Falcon rocket was equipped with landing feet in the hopes of a soft splashdown into the Atlantic Ocean. After the first separation, 3 of the 9 engines were refired to slow the booster's re-entry into the atmosphere. Usually, rocket engines come back down so fast that they burn up completely. Once the rocket came down to a lower altitude within Earth's atmosphere, a final single engine was fired that slowed it down enough to land vertically in the water and float for a few seconds before tipping over. June 28th, 2015, Falcon 9 explodes in midair. Before we get into the biggest success for SpaceX, it would be wrong if we didn't mention some failures as well. This is a YouTube video. We've got to bring some drama in here somehow. This launch was all going according to plan for the first 2 minutes of flight until an overpressure incident occurred in the second stage LOX tank, leading to the vehicle breakup at T plus 150 seconds. Basically, the whole rocket exploded into little pieces. The Dragon capsule at the end of the Falcon rocket did survive the explosion. However, the capsule was lost upon splashdown as its software did not contain provisions for parachute deployment on launch vehicle failure. This led Elon to install an abort software in all future Dragon capsules that would allow for parachutes to be deployed during a launch failure and prevent another one from free falling into the ocean and ending up at the bottom of the sea. September 1st, 2016, Falcon 9 launch pad explosion. At the time of this explosion, SpaceX was conducting a static fire engine test on the Falcon 9. These tests, which typically precede each SpaceX launch, involve firing the Falcon 9's rocket's first stage engines while the booster remains secured to the launch pad. In this case, an anomaly on the launch pad led to the entire vehicle becoming a massive ball of flames. The rocket-grade kerosene and liquid oxygen propellant of the Falcon 9 makes for a pretty spectacular explosion, which is followed by a humongous fire and a series of smaller blasts. The Amos 6 communications satellite was the unfortunate passenger of this doomed flight, and the satellite reportedly cost $195 million and was built for Spacecom by Israel Aerospace Industries. December 23rd, 2017, a spectacle launch. I gotta throw this one in just because it looks so goddamn cool. This was easily the most spectacular launch caught on video. As the rocket ascends into the sky, it leaves behind this incredible display. Elon Musk joked on Twitter that it was a nuclear alien UFO from North Korea. And yeah, if you didn't know exactly what you were looking at the time, this would be straight up terrifying to see. And some of you might actually remember seeing this as it went viral all over social media. February 6th, 2018, maiden voyage of the Falcon Heavy. The launch of the Falcon Heavy was a demonstration by SpaceX that they could build rockets just as big and powerful as anything NASA had in their lineup. The Falcon Heavy is capable of lifting 140,000 pounds to low Earth orbit, more than any other rocket at the time. And in addition to raw power, the Heavy also showed off how economical the SpaceX system could be, as 2 of the rocket boosters from the flight landed safely back on Earth to be reused in another launch. Of course, Elon Musk took this historic opportunity to inject his own playful sense of humor into the flight and had the Falcon Heavy deliver a Tesla Roadster, complete with a spacesuited driver named Starman, into an orbit that would take it out past Mars and around our inner solar system for centuries to come. May 30th, 2020, first human flight for SpaceX. 2020 was a garbage year in most regards, but for SpaceX, it marked their most significant accomplishment yet. they successfully launched NASA astronauts Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken into orbit and delivered them to the International Space Station. We've talked about this before, but this was the first time a private company had achieved the feat. After ending their space shuttle program in 2011, NASA had been relying on the Russian government's space program to get their people up to the ISS. It had always been NASA's hope that an American commercial enterprise would step up to fill that gap, and SpaceX were the first to be able to gain their trust enough to take on the mission. This is the beginning, said NASA Administrator Jim Bridenstine. We are now launching astronauts to low Earth orbit again, but we will soon be going to the moon. We will be going to the moon sustainably with commercial partners and international partners. We are going to use the resources of the moon to learn how to live and work for long periods of time. Ultimately, we're going to take all of that knowledge and we're going to go to Mars. So which SpaceX launch was your favorite? Drop it in the comments below. We're going to be running through all of the other launches that we were able to find to show you guys to end off today's video. There is so much more on the way from this company in 2021 and beyond. Let us know what you're looking forward to the most, and we might include it in the next SpaceX video on this channel. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up today if you liked it, and subscribe to our channel for weekly content just like this.
5,
First stage
4,
engine sequence initiated.
3, 2, 1. We have liftoff.
Have liftoff.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
We're in stage
And
one.
we're flying. Plus 12.
Pitch kick. 4, 3, 2, 1.
Ignition.
T0, +1, +2, +3. We have liftoff of the SpaceX Falcon 1 carrying Rosexot satellite for ATSB.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Stage one.
Liftoff.
We have MLO.
Liftoff of the Falcon 9. Falcon 9 has cleared the towers.
3, 2, 1, 0. We have liftoff of the Falcon 9, stage 1. Pitch kick. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
First stage engines and tanks. Looking good.
Beginning gravity turn. Telemetry lock on both stages. Power systems nominal.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 0. Liftoff. Falcon 9. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. Falcon 9.
Dragon 6 first stage acceleration.
Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. Prop KVI GNC, move to section 10.59. GC, move to section 10.58.
GC to 10.58. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have liftoff of the Falcon 9. Falcon 9 has cleared the towers. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff of the Falcon 9. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. Four, 3, 2, 1, 0.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have liftoff of the Falcon 9. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have liftoff of the Falcon 9.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have liftoff of the Falcon 9. Falcon 9 is cleared to tower.
4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition sequence start and liftoff of the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket, adding to the International Space Station access for future American rockets. And Falcon has cleared the tower.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. We have liftoff of the Falcon 9. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
Five, 4, 3, 0. Stage 1 center. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. Falcon 9 has cleared the towers. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. Falcon 9 has cleared the towers. GC move to section 10.59 to secure the pad. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff of the Falcon 9. Four, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff of the Falcon 9.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff of the Falcon 9.
4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off the Falcon 9. Falcon 9 is out. 5, 4, 3, 2,
4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff. Brakes in the first stage. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. Liftoff of Falcon 9, the world's first reflight of orbital-class rocket. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower.
4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff of the Falcon 9.
It's 4, 3, 2. Five, 4, 3, 2, 1. We have liftoff of Falcon 9. Falcon 9 has cleared the tower. 4, 3, 2, 1. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off the Falcon 9. Prop AVI, RC, and GMC proceed to 3.170 for post-launch flight operations. T-minus 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition. Lift off the Falcon 9. Falcon 9 is clear the tower.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff of the Falcon 9. Falcon 9 is clear the tower.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off the Falcon 9.
3, 2, 1.
Four, 3, 2, 1.
Four, 3, 2, 1, 0. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Ignition. Liftoff.
flight operations. Gyroscope.
Crew video. The first assembly flight of the International Space Station, and our flight really started back in November of '98 with the launching of Zarya, the first Russian-built module, paid for under contract to Boeing, launched aboard a Proton rocket from Baikonur in Kazakhstan, the Russian launch site. This is Zarya underneath the shroud here, and the 6 main engines of the Proton rocket lifting it up into orbit. We had everybody over to the house that evening to watch the launch, and we were all pretty excited when Zarya made it safely on orbit, because we knew we were going to have a mission a couple of weeks later to take Unity up to rendezvous with Zarya. And here's a great shot of the orbiter on the pad. I don't think there's anything that's more exciting than seeing a space shuttle fueled and ready to go at night with the xenons shining on it. We had a little bit of a delay the night before getting off the ground, but the next night we came back, we were pumped up and ready to go, and excited about getting out to the launch pad for what turned out to be an uneventful ascent. Endeavour is just a fantastic spaceship. Of course, the large orange external tank holds the fuel and oxidizer for the main engines. Here we see the vent cap retracting over the external tank, and a view of that from the cockpit too, out the commander's window. We've got our visors down now, and we're ready to go for launch. The main engines ignite 6 seconds prior to launch, a little better than 1/3 of a million pounds of thrust in each one. You can see them push the whole stack forward as it moves forward. When it comes back to the vertical, that's when the solid rocket motors light. A night launch is pretty spectacular. Here's what it looks like in the cockpit, shaking and vibrating and being pushed back in your seat, accelerating up. You really know you're going somewhere. The light from the solids and the main engines just turns nighttime into daylight, and all that light comes back in through the windows of the orbiter also. Here we are about 30 seconds into the mission. The solid rocket motors burn for about 2 minutes and get us through the thickest part of the Earth's atmosphere. Here you can see the thrust tailing off, and they'll separate away. And we'll get another view of that from inside when the separation motors fire and push the solids off. Pretty big flash there, really gets your attention. And then they separate back and are recovered and refurbished for use again, and we continue on to our orbital velocity, 17,500 miles an hour. Here's main engine cutoff. You can see a stopwatch floating by, and the flashes out the window are the 800-pound reaction control jets firing to move us away from the tank and maintain our attitude. And a great shot of the external tank. You get a real sense of speed as we track the external tank over the Pyrenees here. going a little better than 5 miles a second over the ground.
Get onto orbit, and the first thing we have to do is to open up the payload bay doors so that we can start cooling all of the electronics inside the orbiter. The doors are actually opening at a faster speed here, shown at a faster speed than what we actually opened them at. It also gave us our first really nice view of Unity in the back of the payload bay.
On the second day of the flight, we went ahead and checked out the shuttle's robotic arm to make sure it was operating fully. And the shuttle's robotic arm worked just great. It flew identically to the way that our simulators fly. These are the snares closing. That's the manner in which we grappled Zarya, was through closing those snares onto the grapple fixture that was mounted to Zarya. And then on flight day 3, it was time to extract Unity from the payload bay. It was wedged in there pretty good. We had a fairly limited clearance to bring it out of the bay, so the whole operation took about an hour and a half to maneuver it up and then onto the orbiter docking system that you saw on the forward portion of the payload bay. And we just flew the arm very slowly, and Jim was great help being my assistant and letting me know how quickly we were moving the payload. We then pitched it up about 90 degrees, rotated it around to align it properly with the orbiter docking system. And the unique thing about mating these components is we actually didn't use the arm to bring it all the way down onto the orbiter docking system. We took it so it was 6 inches apart, and then we fired the thrusters on board the shuttle to provide the closure rate necessary to attain the capture sequence. And you saw the thrusters firing there.
Nancy did an outstanding job pulling the payload out of the payload bay Unity. Couldn't have done it better. Very smooth and controlled and precise. She had less than an inch of clearance on either side as she brought it up. She was pretty happy when everything turned out right. And here you see the final closure of the Zarya with the orbiter docking station, just like we dock with Mir Space Station. Once pulled together, we have a solid mating surface. We drive the hooks and can pressurize it so we can go inside.
We had a lot of EVA equipment that was stowed in the middeck of the orbiter, and every time we had spare time, we would go down and start to prepare that equipment for going outside on our 3 spacewalks.
The rendezvous was absolutely fantastic to see Zarya, which means sunrise in Russian, out on the horizon as we closed in on it for our capture. What a beautiful sight. Rendezvous is a real team effort. You can see us working on the flight deck here as we approach Zarya from 600 feet underneath it. Everybody's taking pictures. There's Jim using the handheld laser to get an accurate distance from it along with our other tools. Rick has moved up into the commander's seat, and I'm moving back to the aft flight deck to fly Endeavour as we come up to 600 feet and then move 350 feet out in front of Zarya, and then come up 250 feet above it and fly it right down in the payload bay. We were using cameras for positioning. Here you can see it approaching its movement down in the payload bay, actually disappearing behind the node as it gets in closer. And here's a computer view of our profile as we flew it in.
We use the laptop computers to help us better understand the orbital mechanics because it's not always intuitive.
The final grapple and proximity operations were done at night. You could see it starting to get darker there, but the orbiter payload bays and the cameras we have allow us to light it up so that we can see it well. We ended up bringing it down in the payload bay and then station keeping on it for what Nancy and I call the longest 17 minutes of our life, having Zarya about 2.5 to 3 feet from the end effector and keeping it still there.
This is a view from the end of the robotic arm and the camera located on it. And this view is now actually from the Russian module Zarya looking down on the arm as it comes into grapple. We actually didn't have that view in the cockpit. And so it was quite a unique experience to know that the ground was looking over our shoulder literally as we came in for the grapple. So we brought it down right over that grapple fixture, that long pin, and closed the snares that you saw in the earlier version to attain the grapple and rigidization process required to maneuver Zarya around. We were very, very happy after we grappled this 45,000-pound free flyer after Bob had literally flown formation with it at Mach 25. And then it was time to install Zarya on top of Unity. Again, we were operating almost at the limit of the robotic arm because the Unity module extended about 40 feet out of the payload bay. And so the arm was almost fully extended as we brought Zarya up and over Unity into the install position. We actually couldn't see the mating surface where it was going to mate, so we had to use cameras alone. This is the elbow camera view. And again, we fired the thrusters to attain that capture sequence with the androgynous positioning mechanism.
Just a really nice view of the space station docked to Endeavour out the overhead window. And now it's time to go to work and start the spacewalks.
Here you see Rick and Sergey as they're opening up the hatch that goes from the middeck or living volume of the space shuttle back into a tunnel that leads to the airlock where our spacesuits were stowed and what we use to go in and out of the space shuttle on our 3 spacewalks. Here we are in the middeck, Jim on the right and myself on the left, as we're demonstrating in space that you can put both your legs into your pants at the same time in zero gravity. After I got my pants on, I went into the airlock to start getting into the rest of the suit, and here's Jim finishing his suit up and going back through the tunnel to the airlock to get into the upper half of his spacesuit. You might notice there's a lot of tools and equipment stowed in that tunnel. There were more that were put in there after we got into our suits, and we use that volume very much to our advantage to transfer a lot of equipment outside to be added to the external surfaces of the station. Jim now into the upper half of his suit, he's putting on his Snoopy cap, his comm cap. We had to put on our gloves, button up our waist bearing, and put our helmets on, and then go through a check out of the suits and a pre-breathe to make sure that we didn't have any problems with the bends. And then when that was all completed, it was time to go outside and start our task.
Here's the cracking of the egg as Jerry opens up the thermal cover and begins the first spacewalk.
We went right to work. We had one crew member that was normally working on the end of the arm and a foot restraint that we had attached there. And the other crew member normally did most of his work in a free float manner, holding on to the sides of the orbiter and space station as he did his work. Nancy operated the mechanical arm for the first 2 spacewalks, and Bob operated on the third one. The arm gives us a very good work platform. It gives us opportunity to have our feet anchored in a foot restraint, and therefore leaves both of our hands free to do the types of assembly work that we were doing. The most important part of the first spacewalk was the connection of 40 different electrical connectors that allowed all the communications and control signals to be transferred between the various different elements of the station, and also, importantly, the electrical power to be transferred from Zarya down to the Unity module so that we could start to activate all the systems inside the US-built Unity module.
Here you can see the power tool that we used to loosen a lot of the bolts that were holding down the cables for launch.
Jim normally was responsible for removing those cables, both the bolts and clamps that held the cables in place, and then he would hand those off to me, and I would make most of the electrical connectors. He also made some of them. And you can see we're working at the orbiter end of the node there, finishing up the electrical connectors there. We then strung a slide wire, which was something that allowed us to transport ourselves up and down the side of the node very efficiently. Then we went to work at the top of the node to remove the cables at that end from their launch positions and to connect those for their on-orbit use. You can see Jim here translating up the side of the node using the slide wire that we had just installed. And you can see he's carrying a foot restraint with him that he used for some of the tasks up at the other end of the station.
This shows how useful the body restraint tether is. It's a way of carrying equipment around or of attaching myself to a handrail so that I can have a more stable area to work and can free up my hands to work if I need to.
Here I am again up at the top end of the node, finishing up the connections of the electrical connectors from the PMA, and here are Jim and I now up removing the cables from the Russian-built hardware, Zarya, and transferring them across to the PMA-1 U.S. hardware and allowing electrical power to flow into the U.S. half of the station. Since we were ahead of our timeline, we continued on with tasks that were planned for our next spacewalk, and here we are transferring some equipment so that we can each go or do our own task. We were installing some handrails and some additional foot restraint sockets that were used on subsequent spacewalks.
After the completion of the first spacewalk, we then activated the space station from inside and actually turned on the computers and electrical power to it, and what a great moment that was. After that, we boosted the space station to a higher altitude using the +X RCS jets on the orbiter. Each one of those jets gives about 800 pounds of thrust, and through a firing sequence that required a lot of analysis so we didn't break the space station. You can see it oscillating back and forth here after one of the firings. We boosted it approximately 8 nautical miles with 11 firings. A little oscillation in one of the solar arrays there. It was 2 minutes and 10 seconds between firings, and that all damped out before we did the next one.
Okay, on the second spacewalk, it was my turn to go outside first to get on the arm, and our primary task on that day was the early communication system. What we were doing is bringing up a communication system that would allow Houston to have video teleconferencing and command and data to the fledgling space station. Although the Russian side is prime for communications early on, they are restricted to communications during their ground passes, and that leaves a lot of the orbit with no communications to the station. And here we are transferring some of that equipment, those antennas, using the arm and the body restraint tether. You can see here that with an orbit that goes around the Earth every hour and a half, that there's 45 minutes a day, 45 minutes of dark. And during the dark times, we keep working using our helmet lights. Here we are up at the Zarya Unity interface, and from there I transferred with a boat hook. There are antennas that the Russians had expected to have deployed, but which did not employ, one on each side. So Jerry and I, each on 2 different spacewalks, took this boat hook and encouraged the antennas to deploy. It turns out they just needed a little nudge, and after doing that, and allowing a little bit of time, perhaps in this case, to warm up, and don't blink here, because what we'll have in a moment, it'll show you what the antenna itself looks like, and then we'll show a picture of the deployment itself. The antenna is a coiled metal on a spool, and there goes the spool. So with activating and deploying that antenna, now the Russian Toru system, which is a manual backup to their docking capability, would be fully operational.
Jim turned real quick there and said, "Where'd it go?"
I did blink and missed it, and I made a quick turn to try to see where it went. On the next one, which Jerry will tell you about on the last EVA, I didn't blink. This was a shot of the end of that final spacewalk as we were cleaning up the payload bay.
At this point of the flight, we had a space station that was ready to go inside, and we began our first day of docked operations with actual ingress into the space station. And what a highlight of the mission to see everybody's hard work come to fruition. Been a long time coming, but to go inside the space station for the first time was really exciting. Here we are opening the hatch, going from the orbiter docking station on into the pressurized mating adapter 2, kind of like the front porch of the space station here, and then opening the main hatch into Unity. And Zarya means sunrise in Russian, and of course Unity is binding us all together. It's the connecting piece which holds all the other modules from the space station. It was a very bright, roomy, and nice place to be. It was quite a sequence to go through all the checks that we had to before making sure it was safe that we could open the hatch, making sure the pressure was correct on both sides. After progressing on, we went through PMA-1 into the first compartment of the FGB of Zarya, and then opening the hatch into the main compartment of Zarya. The purpose of the FGB is to provide the initial electrical power and flight control for the early stages of the space station. Here we are, all inside Zarya for the very first conference from the space station. Sergei Krikalev, our Russian crew member, will actually be going up to live on the space station with Bill Shepard and Yuri Gudzinko. And he's checking out his new home here, future home. Sergei has over a year's spaceflight experience on the Mir space station, and as you can see, he readily adapted to microgravity and being home on this module. Watch how effortlessly he translates down to the other end. Very nice place to be. More of a corridor than anything else, not meant for living. Here we are with the early communication system. Jim and Jerry installed the antennas on the outside, and then Jerry and I installed the boxes inside.
The Zarya had 6 batteries, one of which was not operating fully after the launch, which was 2 weeks prior to the launch of Endeavour, and so they had the opportunity to send over a replacement unit that Sergei and I removed and replaced, and an hour later it was up and functioning. So we felt very good about that, and it's another testament to having human beings in space to fix things and get things operating again. We also had to remove a lot of structural panels and bolts that were put in specifically so that the modules could withstand the loads at launch. And we wanted to remove those to make accessibility behind the panels easier. So we ended up bringing back about 800 bolts and nuts and washers back from the space station.
We had to pinch ourselves every time we looked out the overhead window. It was just hard to believe that we were docked to a new International Space Station. The view of the aft and forward flight decks of Endeavour. Kind of take you on a little tour as we transit through the mid-deck access hatch. Behind that door and curtain is the bathroom on the space shuttle. The mid-deck is where we do all our living and sleeping and eating. Here you can see Jim down on the mid-deck. He was in charge of transferring all the equipment to and from the space station, making sure that what went that was supposed to got there and what didn't stayed. Rick's bringing back some stuff that had been removed from the space station for shipment home to Houston. These large bags held all that equipment. You can see it was kind of a tight squeeze. We had a lot of stuff packaged all over. Again, transiting through the hatch into the tunnel that connects to the airlock. You can see a booster fan down there to help circulate air between all the modules so that we could scrub the CO2 and provide oxygen for everybody, as well as maintaining the proper temperature and humidity. Instead of going out through the aft hatch, we now go up through the upper hatch of the airlock into the space station. More of that ducting circulating the air. Into the pressurized mating adapter, and then down into Unity. Here's Jerry and Nancy reviewing procedures for the next work that they have to get started on. We were really busy for the 2 days that we were docked to the space station. Across Unity into pressurized mating adapter 1, and here comes Sergei floating by as he exits Zarya. Into the first compartment of Zarya. Again, you can see the ducting that we installed. And finally into the main compartment. Again, Zarya is not meant to be a living module. It's a working module and more or less a corridor between the other modules of the space station. A really fantastic facility. Probably one of the sad points of the mission was when we closed the hatch on the space station after being aboard for 2 days. It was really, we wanted to stay longer. It was a great place to be.
Here we are checking out one of the simplified aid for EVA rescue, a little jet backpack before the third EVA.
One of the primary tasks of this spacewalk was to add a very large bag, about 3 feet on a side, to the outside of the station, which contains a lot of tools which will be used by future crews in the assembly processes of the station. After that was done, then Jim and I came back down to the orbiter end of the space station and disconnected 6 cables and stowed them. Those cables are no longer needed, and to get ahead for future assembly tasks, we removed those cables and stowed them.
It was very symbolic. It really represented the permanent joining of our 2 countries in this space endeavor.
Then the second of the 2 Toru antennas that had not deployed properly were attended to, and you can see me on the foot restraint here using the boat hook or pole to release that second antenna, and there it goes. The spool missing the tail of the orbiter by quite a few feet. We then proceeded all the way to the top of the Zarya stack, about 80 feet out of the payload bay of the orbiter. We installed a handrail up there at the top of Zarya, and then also identified 2 exposure trays that were no longer in their proper on-orbit configuration. They probably vibrated free during launch.
You have to look very carefully to see us up at the very top of that stack, 2 small figures working.
After we were given go from the ground to fix those 2 trays, we did that, and then we proceeded back down Zarya, back down onto the node. We finished off our operations on the stack of the station, and then had the opportunity to do a flight test of the rescue backpack, the little rocket rack backpack on the back of my suit. We identified a couple of problems that we're going to fix, and we'll have a fully functional, satisfactory way for a crew member to save themselves should they become detached from the structure of the station.
Sure was a pretty sight seeing the space station attached to Endeavour, but then came the point in the mission where we had to separate and prepare to come home.
And this next sequence of shots again highlights all the teamwork on this crew that really went into almost every event. There were at least 2 of us, and you'll be able to see here as we separate right there from PMA-2 from the orbiter docking system and begin to back away. When we get to 2 feet, then I'll put in some out pulses, which will cause Endeavour to fly away from the International Space Station.
Rick was at the flight controls at the aft flight deck for this portion of the mission and flew Endeavour away from the space station out to a distance of 450 feet and then flew around it 1.5 times, and he did an outstanding job.
We undocked in darkness, but very quickly the sun rose, and this shows everybody. There's Nancy at the front inputting the orbiter attitudes into the space shuttle computer system. There's Jerry is closing out the docking system, performing the final steps to secure that. And Jim was assisting with the computers and taking handheld laser marks. As the sun came up, it was very bright in the cockpit, and fortunately, the experienced crew members warned me that it'd be necessary to have sunglasses. As we backed away, we just had beautiful views of the space station that we couldn't really see as well when we were right docked with it, but it was just a beautiful sight against the background of the Earth there. And you can see Sergey is beginning the photo documentation. We flew around 1.5 times so that the station could be documented from all sides with different lighting. And those photos will be analyzed by the folks on the ground and used to train future crews as well.
What a fantastic view. What a sense of accomplishment to see an operating International Space Station on orbit.
That shows the empty payload bay. The mission wasn't by any means over yet. We still had work to do. And the next thing we had to do was deploy SAC-A, which was the first successfully launched Argentina-built satellite. And it has a number of small different experiments and new technologies which are being proven from Argentina. And we understand it's doing very well in accomplishing all of its mission objectives. And it had a slight mutation as it came out of the can, but quickly stabilized.
No crew movie would be complete without some shots of the crew living on orbit. As I said, the middeck is where we live and eat and sleep. And here you can see the crew grabbing a bite to eat. Rick working on the computer there, sending some email home. It's a great morale boost to be able to communicate with your family. Exercise is very important. We have a cycle ergometer. Here I am riding it, and there's Rick using it another way. Computers are a great aid to us. Nancy typing away, sending letters, and Jim with his juggling act. Here's Sergey with a ball of water, showing the unique property that fluids have in a microgravity environment.
There's Jerry running around the middeck.
There wasn't a whole lot of room to get a real lap in.
Nancy said he was just bouncing off the walls.
Food is a very important part of life on orbit as anywhere else. And here you can see me preparing some spaghetti and rehydrating it. All the food during our flight was very delicious. Don't let your kids try this next trick at home. You got to be in 0G to make it work right.
I think this was actually Rick's about 5th package. One of those wasn't enough for a meal for him.
It's true. This was our second hitchhiker satellite we deployed. It's Mighty Sat. It was built at Phillips Lab in Kirtland Air Force Base, New Mexico. That's also doing very well.
Here's my version of the men's warehouse, setting up the suits for deorbit. And then there's always a sad moment when it's time to close the doors. This is triple speed. They actually go a little slower, but we wanted you to see the whole sequence. As the doors come shut, you realize that it's really time to pack your bags to enjoy perhaps one last sunset before getting into those suits and preparing the flight deck for reentry. We've taken a rocket and turned it into an on-orbiting spaceship, and we're taking our spaceship and turning it into a glider to where the commander and the pilot, Bob and Rick, and going to get us home now. Now, as we re-enter the Earth's atmosphere, we have those special tiles that keep us from burning up. Otherwise, we'd be just a brief shooting star. But as it is, we do create a plasma behind us, which you can see here pulsing. And it's so bright that as it flashes and pulses, it flashes inside the cabin. And you can see out the window also that every once in a while there'll be a little shower of sparks. And I always sort of wonder what that was.
Probably little pieces of gap filler between the tiles burning up as it goes by, but again, you wonder. This is a view out the heads-up display on the pilot's side, same as the commander's. We're descending through 28,000 feet, a long-range view of infrared shot, and then again through the heads-up display as we do the pre-flare maneuver, coming down for a touchdown on runway 15 at the Kennedy Space Center. Our touchdown speed's about 195 knots. A beautiful night shot of Endeavour as we come into the brightness of the xenon lights, touching down on speed on centerline. We didn't have a drag chute. Here you can see it through the heads-up display as we rotate the nose down to the runway. But at this gross weight and with the brakes as good as they are, it was not required to have a drag chute for our flight. And we safely brought an Endeavour to a stop. Here's a really pretty view of the support crew coming out to greet us at wheel stop. We also had another welcoming committee. There were some Apollo astronauts at the Space Center for a reunion. There's Jim Lovell and Gene Cernan and Bill Anders, and there's our administrator, Mr. Golden. And there's a really happy crew after an outstanding mission. But this is only the beginning of the International Space Station, and we've got a long way to go. And we're going to take those 2 modules and add a service module for living and even more modules as the space station continues to grow into a world-class microgravity lab that's in space 24 hours a day, 365 days a year doing science. When it's done, larger than a football field with all its truss structures and solar arrays, and it truly will be the brightest new star on the horizon. And as it goes over the horizon, we know we've got a lot of work in front of us, but we know that NASA and the entire team is up to the challenge.
OC on countdown.
Copy, go ahead.
OC, at this time, do we have concurrence that we've properly enforced the public risk clearance criteria set in our procedures and that our FAA license is intact?
Affirmative to both. I have checked in with.
Good afternoon. You're looking at SpaceX's Starship Suborbital Test Vehicle number 15, countdown to flight in just under 5 minutes. It was almost 5 weeks ago. We launched Starship 11 on a test flight from the adjacent Pad B. Today's flight is from Pad A. Our demonstration objective again is with the last 4 flights. Slowly climb to 10-kilometer altitude, which will take about 4 minutes, turning off engines on the way up as we burn off propellant mass. Once we reach 10 kilometers altitude, we will begin the horizontal descent back to the landing zone adjacent to the launch pad. If all goes well, we'll light 3 engines to flip the stage back to vertical and eventually land on a single engine. This flight includes multiple upgrades and improvements to address the findings from the rapid unplanned disassembly we experienced on the last flight. This vehicle also incorporates changes that get us closer to the orbital configuration planned for flight later. T-minus 2 minutes, we continue to count down for Starship 15 flight. Pellet load is complete in the liquid oxygen system on the Starship. Methane fuel load is also complete on the Starship. T-minus 1 minute. All systems remain go for the flight of Starship 15. We're getting ready to disconnect the quick disconnect from the vehicle in preparation for flight. T plus 30 seconds. Starship 15 is airborne as we get a view of the 3 Raptor engines as we're powering our way to 10 kilometers altitude in today's test flight. Just past 1 minute into flight, we're through 2 kilometers altitude. All 3 Raptor engines continuing to burn. Next major event, about 1 minute, is we will turn off the first of the 3 Raptor engines. Coming up at T plus 2 minutes, we appear to have frozen the view from the engine cameras. However, the Raptor engine's continuing to perform, and we've got shutdown on engine 3 on time. T plus 2 minutes, 40 seconds. While we're trying to regain video from the vehicle, we continue to ascend. We have just passed the 8-kilometer point in flight. Everything continues to look good on Starship 15. Coming up on 3.5 minutes into flight, we're approaching the 10-kilometer altitude. We'll begin to hover here. We've had engine number 2 shut down on time. We'll now be moving into the hover with 1 engine. And then in a little bit, we will begin the flip over to horizontal position and begin our descent, where hopefully a ground camera will be able to bring us live views of the flight. Just past T plus 4 minutes into flight, we've got the views back from the Raptor engines. We get T plus 4 minutes, 34 seconds. While we're working to regain video, it looks like we've got a shot looking back at the flaps on Starship. We're in the horizontal descent phase now. We're passing 6 kilometers. A reminder, phase that's coming up as we get ready for landing, we will light 3 Raptor engines, flip the vehicle from horizontal to vertical. If things look good, we will shut down 1 Raptor engine and then possibly a second one and land on a single engine in the landing zone. 5 minutes into flight, Raptor continuing to descend. We're coming up on 3 kilometers altitude. have ignition. Starship heading back to the landing zone. And Starbase Flight Control has confirmed, as you can see on the live video, we are down. The Starship has landed. We're going through the safing sequence in the flight computer right now. We'll be back in a moment. Well, if you've just joined us, you missed a great flight. Right now, we have successfully landed in the landing zone, right on the concrete. You can see we do have a small fire at the base of the vehicle, not unusual with the methane fuel that we're carrying as we continue to work on the test vehicle design. You may be able to see water going on the pad from the water cannons. But again, Starship 15, powered by 3 Raptor engines, we have successfully launched it from our facility in South Texas, landed after a routine flight where we shut engines down on the way to 10 kilometers, executed the horizontal unpowered descent, and then we got some great views of the engines lighting up as we came down for a landing at a nice slow velocity onto the concrete landing pad. The past 2 weeks have been full of accomplishments by the SpaceX team. We've had the incredible launch of the Crew 2 astronauts on the Crew Dragon Resilience. We've had the first nighttime landing and recovery of the 4 astronauts on Crew Dragon Endeavor's flight last Saturday night, and 2 successful flights of Falcon 9 in the past 7 days, each carrying 60 Starlink satellites successfully into orbit. And now the SpaceX Texas team has flown a test flight of Starship with a landing back in the landing zone here in Starbase, Texas. Also like to remember, this is the 60th anniversary of the first American in space, astronaut Alan Shepard and his Mercury capsule, and SpaceX has landed Starship successfully on this date. Again, an outstanding period as we work to enable the future of human spaceflight and expansion into the solar system. And with that, we're going to conclude today's webcast with the views here of Starship 15. Thank you for joining us here at SpaceX, and have a good day.
Three, 2, 1, ignition. We have liftoff.
You're looking at Starship serial number 9 on the right. We are counting down for today's 10-kilometer test flight. We've just passed the T-minus 4-minute mark. We are currently loading liquid methane and liquid oxygen propellants onto Starship. Today's flight will be similar to our previous flight last December. T-minus 2 minutes, continuing to count down on the flight of Starship serial number 9. That's the vehicle on the right of your screen, currently venting. On the left is Starship serial number 10, which is also being checked out for a similar flight later this month. T-minus 1 minute to the launch of Starship serial number 9. Propellant loading is complete. Next event is retract of the quick disconnect from the flight vehicle.
Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Plus 30 seconds, all 3 Raptor engines, gas power. Starship climbing to 10 kilometer altitude. View on the right shows 3 Raptor engines burning. Everything continues to look nominal right now for the stage and for propulsion. Plus 90 seconds of the flight. Everything continues to be nominal with Starship. We're just passing through 3 kilometer altitude. Next major event is shutdown of engine number 3. T plus 2 minutes. Flight continuing on Starship. As a reminder, this is a test flight to a 10 kilometer altitude. Engine number 3 shut down on time as planned. We're continuing to climb on 2 engines. Everything continues to go well with Starship.
Good engine performance so far. T2 shut down.
T plus 3 minutes, 20 seconds. We've shut down engine 2 on time. You saw that on the screen just a few seconds ago. Starship now climbing on the power of engine number 1, headed to the 10 kilometer altitude. T plus 4 minutes. Vehicle is at 10 kilometers. It is at apogee. We're continuing to throttle down engine number 1 to hold altitude. We're preparing for handover on the propellant tank. Four and a half minutes, we are handing off to the LOX tank. We are beginning to flip to horizontal. And the white cloud, the plume you were seeing was intentional. There is a liquid oxygen dump. We've now transitioned to horizontal and beginning the subsonic test portion of the flight, where we check out the aft and the forward flaps to hold the vehicle stability as we descend back to the landing pad. T plus 5.5 minutes. Starship continuing the subsonic descent, using the forward and aft flaps to control its attitude as we come back down to the landing pad. Everything continuing to go well in this portion of flight.
Land intro.
6 minutes, 10 seconds into flight. We're down beneath 1.5 kilometers. We're preparing to restart 2 engines, flip the vehicle vertical, then transition to 1 engine for the landing burn.
Oh, I see. Let's get cameras up.
Rolling to anomaly net and opening 3.911 at this time. We will start sweeping for fires.
As you can see from the scene, we had, again, another great flight up to the 10-kilometer apogee. We demonstrated the ability to transition the engines to the landing propellant tanks. The subsonic reentry looked very good and stable like we saw again last December, so we've got a lot of good data on flap control. And again, we've just got to work on that landing a little bit, but we'll find out from the team as they go through the data. We were in contact with telemetry all the way down. So all told, another great, and a reminder, this is a test flight, second time we've flown Starship in this configuration. We've got a lot of good data, and the primary objective to demonstrate control of the vehicle in the subsonic reentry look to be very good, and we will take a lot out of that. And with that, we're going to wrap up today's webcast. Thanks for logging on and watching, and we'll be back with another Starship in the near future.
Stage route is go for flight.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Go for launch.
Vehicle is supersonic.
Stage separation confirmed. Dragon, separation confirmed.
Stage 1 is transonic. Landing legs have deployed. And Falcon 9 has landed.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kate Tice, and I'm the Quality Systems Engineering Manager here at SpaceX. I'm joining you today from SpaceX headquarters in Hawthorne, California, just a few hours south of our Vandenberg Space Force Base launch pad, which you see there on your screen. Today's Starlink mission.
Thanks, President, for strongback retract.
Today's Starlink mission will mark SpaceX's 45th launch this year and 183rd launch of all time. Now, for those of you following along, you know it's already been a pretty exciting day for us here at SpaceX. About 7 hours ago, the NASA Crew 5 mission lifted off from Launch Pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center, headed to the International Space Station. The crew has another 22 hours to go before reaching the orbiting laboratory, and we're looking forward to their arrival tomorrow afternoon about 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. But for now, let's turn our attention to our 64th launch of Starlink. The teams are currently tracking no issues with the vehicles or spacecraft. Weather and range are both green for launch, and we are proceeding with a T0 of 4:10 p.m. Pacific Time, just 4 minutes from now. The range is green and ready to support liftoff. And in preparation for liftoff, we're standing by for TE retraction. We heard that the strongback was being pressurized, and it is a little tough to see through the fog there at Vandenberg, so we'll try to bring you a camera view if it's available. But we should see those clamp arms opening up. Propellant load is underway on both the first and second stage. RP1 load is complete on both first and second stage. We're expecting the LOX load to complete in under about 20 seconds from now on the first stage, and LOX load will complete on second stage about T-minus 2 minutes. Falcon 9 uses RP1 and LOX, or rocket grade kerosene, rocket propellant 1, and liquid oxygen.
Stage 1 LOX load complete.
And there's that confirmation that LOX load is wrapped up on the first stage. The next milestone coming up at T-minus 2 minutes will be LOX load complete on the second stage. It looks like the strongback has retracted if you look carefully at the shadows through the misty fog. Now, if we had a little bit of a clearer view, we'd be able to see some white gas venting from the vehicle now that the LOX load has completed on the first stage. Just some of that liquid oxygen liquid oxygen vaporizing as it makes contact with the air, and also as the lines that fuel the vehicle are vented. Some of that bleeds off. There we have a little bit of a clearer view. The launch pad is just beyond that range. LOX load now wrapping up on second stage.
Stage 2 LOX load complete.
All right, and there's that call out. So at this point in time, Falcon 9 is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of fuel and liquid oxygen. And there we see more of that venting occurring. Now the booster there on screen is flying for the 5th time today. It previously supported NROL 87 and 85, Sarah 1, and a Starlink mission. And after liftoff and stage separation, that booster is scheduled to land on our drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You, which is currently parked
Falcon 9 is in startup.
a couple hundred miles off the coast of California. There we just heard the call out, Falcon 9 is in startup, Should be getting the final go from launch for launch.
LD is go for launch.
There it is. So we're now go for all systems. Let's listen in to the final count.
T-minus 30 seconds. Fifteen seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Engine full power. And liftoff of Starlink 429. Go Falcon 9. Vehicles resume downrange. M1D chamber pressure is nominal. Power and telemetry nominal. Falcon supersonic.
And there we just heard Falcon 9 is now traveling faster than the speed of sound.
Max Q.
And there we heard that Falcon 9 passed through max Q, which is the period of maximum dynamic pressure that the vehicle will feel during flight. So we're going to throttle those Merlin engines back up in preparation for main engine cutoff. We're about 1 minute away from main engine cutoff, or MECO, if you're following along with the timeline there at the bottom of your screen. Following MECO,
started.
We'll have stage separation and second engine start, and we just heard that MVAC chill has begun. That's when we flow a little bit of the super chilled liquid oxygen into the turbo pump of the second stage engine, the MVAC, in order to prepare the hardware for the full flow of liquid oxygen. About 10 seconds away from main engine cutoff.
MECO. Stage separation confirmed. MVAC ignition.
All right, quick succession there. Next up will be fairing deploy, and there we saw it live.
Fairing separation confirmed.
Separation confirmed. We can now see the Starlink satellites as well as the grid fins on the left-hand side of your screen now being deployed on the first stage. Today we will attempt to recover those fairing halves again to use on a future mission. Beautiful view on the right-hand side of your screen as that MVAC nozzle begins to develop a beautiful red-orange glow. I love that view of planet Earth in the background. We can see first stage on the left-hand side of your screen is still slightly gaining in altitude. It has not yet reached its apogee. The next major event in about less than 2 minutes will be stage 1 entry burn. We will ignite 3 of the Merlin 1D engines at the base of the first stage in order to help slow the vehicle down as it re-enters the Earth's atmosphere. As I mentioned before, today's mission marks SpaceX's 45th launch this year. Sound like we had a call out that both vehicles are following nominal trajectories, so everything looking good there. Booster you saw on the left-hand side of your screen previously supported NROL 87 and 85, Sarah 1, and a Starlink mission, making today its 5th flight. As a reminder, Starlink is a satellite internet constellation designed and manufactured by SpaceX to provide high-speed, low-latency internet to people living in remote and rural locations all around the globe. Service is currently available in 49 markets around the world. So we are about 15 seconds away from stage 1 entry burn. That will be followed by the landing burn of the first stage.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
There on your screen, we can see that entry burn has begun with the first stage on the left-hand side of your screen.
Stage 1 entry burn shut down.
All right, and that first of 2 maneuvers that the first stage is due to complete is now done, and we can see the grid fins actuating to help steer the booster to a precise landing on our drone ship. As the clouds
Stage 1 FTS has safe.
As the clouds get closer into view, you can get a better sense of just how fast the vehicle is traveling. Based on the telemetry there on screen, we can see that it is coming down to about 4,000 kilometers per hour. Really demonstrating the ability of the atmosphere to help slow the vehicle down in addition to the re-entry burn.
Stage 1 transonic.
All right, we're about 30 seconds away from the first stage landing burn. Right about the same time as we expect to see the first stage land, we should also hear callouts for second engine cutoff as well as hopefully good orbit.
Stage 2 terminal guidance. Stage 1 landing burn.
So there we can see the landing burn has begun. Rushing through the clouds, and there's the drone ship
Stage 2
now in view.
FTS has safed. Landing leg deploy.
And there you can see on your
Stage 1 landing
screen
confirmed.
and heard there with the call out, Falcon 9 has successfully landing, marking the 145th landing of an orbital class rocket, our 45th launch of 2022,
Back shutdown.
and our second launch today.
Nominal orbit insertion.
All right, and there we heard the call out for both second engine cutoff and there just now good orbital insertion. So now that we know we've reached good orbit, we had that successful second engine cutoff. Second stage is now carrying 52 Starlink satellites into low Earth orbit. And with confirmation of first stage landing and successful second engine cutoff, we're going to wrap up today's launch coverage. If you're interested in following along, we have our nets live on YouTube, so be sure to check SpaceX social media for confirmation of Starlink deploy. Thanks for joining us today, and be sure to tune in tomorrow as well for our live coverage of Dragon's arrival to the space station for the NASA Crew 5 mission, along with our third and final launch of the week for our customer Intelsat. Until then, have a good night, get some sleep.
You're looking at a live view of the Falcon 9 rocket as it prepares to launch at 12:45 p.m. Eastern Time from historic Pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Good afternoon and welcome to the webcast of SpaceX's CRS-12 mission to launch to resupply the International Space Station. My name is Tom Perderio and I'm a firmware engineer in the avionics department here at SpaceX. Now today's mission will mark the final new cargo Dragon spacecraft to visit the ISS, with all future CRS launches from SpaceX to be conducted with reused Dragon spacecraft. Now on board Dragon today are 6,000 pounds of cargo, including food, crew provisions, medical supplies, fuel, and air for the station, as well as a number of research experiments, which we'll talk about more during the webcast, or later on during the webcast. Also today, after the Falcon 9 drops that Dragon spacecraft into orbit, the first stage will be attempting to land at our LZ-1 landing zone back at Cape Canaveral, just a few miles south of Kennedy Space Center, where we're launching from today. On your screen, you can see a beautiful shot of Pad 39A at Kennedy Space Center in Florida. Let's take a look at exactly what you can see on your screen right now. At the center of the screen is the Falcon 9 rocket. This rocket is comprised of two main stages. That bottom two-thirds of the rocket or so is the first stage. This blasts the rocket off from liftoff in just about 11 minutes from now to about 100 kilometers above the surface of the Earth. And then on top of that is the second stage, which takes the Dragon spacecraft the rest of the way into orbit. At the very top of the rocket, that nose cone looking thing at the very top, that is the Dragon and its trunk. That Dragon is currently loaded with about 6,000 pounds of supplies and experiments for the ISS. On the back of the view, you can see the fixed surface structure and rotating structure. These are left over from the shuttle era of this pad. Mind you, today is an instantaneous launch window, so if we don't get a chance to launch at exactly 12:45 p.m. today, we will be having to attempt again on another date. Just a small correction, that is a liftoff at 12:31 p.m. Eastern Time today. Now here at SpaceX, we conduct our go, no-go poll of the rocket at about T-minus 78 minutes. This is when the launch director polls all of the launch teams and makes sure that all systems in the rocket are good to go for a launch. So at T-minus 78 minutes, we did have that go, no-go poll, and all systems are go for launch. We started loading liquid RP1 fuel, that is our liquid kerosene fuel, into the rocket at about T-minus 70 minutes, and then started loading our oxidizer, liquid oxygen, at about T-minus 45 minutes. We're just about full on both the RP1 and liquid oxygen, and we'll be full topped off at about T-minus 5 and T-minus 3 minutes, respectively. All in all, that is 1 million pounds total of rocket fuel and liquid oxygen. Our liquid helium pressurant started loading at about T-minus 23 minutes, and we're almost done with that. Engine chill just started, or is just about to start at T-minus 10 minutes. This is when we flush those engines with liquid oxygen and get them ready to receive their cryogenic propellants. Right now, weather is looking fantastic, as you can see on the camera. We monitor a few weather conditions here for launch. One of them is anvil clouds and lightning. Obviously, those look pretty good right now. No lightning in sight at the Cape. Other things that we monitor are low-level winds and upper-altitude winds. Both of those are looking fantastic. We just had a report back from the launch from the weather balloons that we launch about every 30 minutes, and upper-altitude winds are looking pretty great. So with the Falcon 9 getting ready to launch, let's talk about what's on board the Dragon today. In addition to the food, water, and provisions for the crew, there's also a bunch of very interesting science experiments going up today. One of which is an augmented reality system to help the crew better organize their tasks and equipment storage on board the station. There's also a circadian rhythm experiment that's designed to allow scientists to observe how the crew reacts to the rapid changes in the day and night cycles on board the station. In terms of scientific equipment, today the Dragon is bringing up what's called the Cosmic Ray Energetics in Mass Experiment, or CREAM. This is a highly sensitive cosmic ray energy detector for measuring the cosmic ray backgrounds of outer space. We also have a protein crystallization experiment, which is designed to observe protein behaviors in microgravity in order to learn more about the causes of Parkinson's disease. Also going up today is a commercial supercomputer experiment that's designed to test the latest generation of commercial electronics against the harsh radiation effects of space. Now, most of this cargo is loaded well in advance of the launch date. However, we do have what's called a late load period, about 6 hours before the rocket launches. As you can see here, that late load period happens while the rocket is still horizontal on top of the transporter erector. This gives SpaceX engineers a last-minute chance to load any cargo that is extremely time-sensitive. This includes anything that's refrigerated or any science experiments that need to be prepared right up until the launch date. So engineers can load those supplies through the forward hatch of the Dragon. Once that forward hatch is secured with all of the late load cargo, the Dragon is then buttoned up to protect it from the harsh environments of launch and liftoff, and then the rocket is rolled up to the launch pad and hoisted vertical. Like I was saying earlier, this is an instantaneous launch window. We have to launch at exactly 12:31 Eastern Time. If we don't, we're going to be attempting to again at the earliest possible time. Once we launch that Dragon into orbit, the first stage of the rocket is going to be coming back towards landing zone 1 at Cape Canaveral. That first stage is going to turn around and execute 3 burn maneuvers. The first burn maneuver is what's known as a boost back burn. This just cancels out all of the horizontal velocity the rocket picked up on its way to orbit and sends it back towards Cape Canaveral. After that boost back burn, there's another burn called the re-entry burn. This happens just as the rocket is approaching the top of the atmosphere to slow it down and make sure that thick atmosphere doesn't damage the engines on its way back down. And then finally, right before the rocket gets towards the pad, we fire the engines one more time in what's known as a landing burn. This takes the rocket from just about a few hundred meters off the pad all the way down to a soft touchdown at LZ-1 in Cape Canaveral. We just got a notification that stage 1 fuel load is complete and the rocket is looking go for launch. All of our weather indications are looking fantastic right now. Earlier today, we were observing an 80% chance of favorable launch conditions, and it looks like that prediction is holding true. Like I was saying, LOX load and RP1 is complete. At about T-minus 1 minute, the rocket is going to be turned over into auto sequence mode. This is when the rocket's internal computers have full control over the launch procedure, starting at T-minus 1 minute, all the way down to liftoff. We're still getting clearance from the range. It sounds like range is go for a launch today. That white steam-looking stuff you see coming out of the rocket is just that liquid oxygen as it slowly boils off. That liquid oxygen is just on the inside of those tanks, and the hot, humid Florida air is on the outside. So as we continue topping up on liquid oxygen, a little bit boils off, and that's released to form that gaseous white cloud. Still getting indications that weather is go for launch. The rocket is looking fantastic. In these final moments, Dragon is also performing final checkouts to make sure that all of its primary systems will work as soon as it's released from the Falcon 9 rocket. At this moment, the cradle arms are opening at the top of that transporter erector tower just to the left of the rocket. In the final moments before liftoff, that transporter erector tower just to the left of the rocket is going to lean back so that the rocket can clear it as it begins descent into the atmosphere. So with just about T-minus 3 minutes to go, we're going to turn it over to the pad and the nets and listen as the rocket prepares to lift off at 12:31 p.m.
Strong vents in position for T0 at 88.3 degrees.
Copy that. And also, just so you know, there's a lot of background noise on your phone.
T-minus 2 minutes. Stage 2 LOX load closed out. Vehicles in self-line. Ground side gas closeouts have started.
AFTS is ready for launch.
BCDC verify. Falcon 9 and Dragon are in startup. Falcon 9's in startup.
Dragon is in startup.
Gas closeouts complete. LD verify. Go for launch.
Go for launch.
T-minus 30. T-minus 20. Falcon 9 is configured for flight. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Liftoff of the Falcon 9. Falcon 9 is near the tower. Check down GC. Move to 39A to pad post.
Copy, Wilco.
You are watching the Falcon 9 rocket carrying the Dragon spacecraft as it ascends through the atmosphere en route to the International Space Station after a successful liftoff from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The vehicle has just passed through supersonic territory. And the vehicle has also just passed through max Q, which is the maximum aerodynamic pressure that the vehicle sees during its ascent through the atmosphere. In just about 45 seconds now, the first stage is going to go through a few maneuvers, all in very close succession. The first of those is going to be main engine cutoff. It's when those 9 Merlin engines at the bottom of the first stage stop thrusting. Immediately after that, this first stage is going to separate from the second stage, and then immediately after that, the second stage's single Merlin vacuum engine is going to ignite and prepare to accelerate the Dragon spacecraft the rest of the way towards the orbit of the International Space Station. You can see those exhaust gases from the Falcon 9 expanding in the upper atmosphere. Stand by for MECO in just about 5 seconds. And as you can see, the main engines have cut off from the first stage, and we have confirmation of a successful separation. Just waiting for that second engine to start up. As you can hear from the crowd cheering downstairs, it sounds like we've had a successful separation and a successful ignition of that upper stage engine. Now on your screen right now, you can see that second stage on the right-hand side as it accelerates towards the International Space Station. However, on the left-hand side, you're looking at a view from the first stage of the Falcon 9 rocket. That first stage just completed its boost back burn, which thrusts it back towards Cape Canaveral and gets it ready for a landing. We can follow along with its process back towards LZ1 on the left-hand side and follow along with Dragon and the second stage progress on the right-hand side. Just had confirmation that the Dragon's nose cone deploy, that is the shield on top of the Dragon that protects the hatch and the forward bulkhead from any aerodynamic pressures. Now that we're out of the atmosphere, we don't need it anymore, so we just pop it off. Getting confirmation from our GNC department that trajectory of the second stage is nominal. On your left-hand side, you can see those grid fins deploying on the first stage. Those grid fins are used to control the first stage as it descends down through the atmosphere. Just had confirmation of a successful boost back burn shutdown as well. Periodically on the left-hand side, you'll see jets of gas. These are cold gas thrusters. In addition to those grid fins, those cold gas thrusters allow that first stage to control its descent so that it can pinpoint land in the center of LZ1. And on the right-hand side of your screen, you can see that second stage nozzle glowing hot with those exhaust gases. That second stage is currently accelerating nominally towards the ISS. We've just acquired signal as well from our Bermuda tracking station. SpaceX has tracking stations situated all over the world so we can maintain constant contact with the second stage engine as it orbits the Earth. that first stage is about 1 minute away from the entry burn. You can see the coast of Florida in the left-hand side of your screen as the stage comes back down towards land. It's still in the very upper regions of the atmosphere where air is very thin, but before it hits the thicker atmosphere portions, we are going to light those engines once again to slow it down just a little bit so it doesn't burn up on its way down towards Cape Canaveral. This is a beautiful shot from space of Cape Canaveral. You can see the white dots of clouds that we just launched through. We should be able to get clear video all the way back down towards landing zone 1. On the right-hand screen, you're seeing a camera shot from our pad at LZ1. And the entry burn has just started. So that Falcon 9 is currently thrusting its way just to slow itself down. Entry burn lasts about a minute. Excuse me, about 10 seconds. And entry burn has just completed. That was successful. For those of us just joining, on the left-hand side, we have a camera on the first stage as it descends, and on the right-hand side, we have a camera on the ground tracking that first stage as it makes its way back. You can see the rocket start to vibrate around as it hits the thicker parts of the atmosphere. In about 10 seconds, that center Merlin engine is going to ignite once more and set the rocket down as gently as possible at the pad at LZ1. Landing burn has begun. On the left-hand side, you can see the first stage approaching the pad. And on the right-hand side, you see the pad shot. Let's watch it land. As you just saw on this webcast, X marks the spot for yet another picture-perfect landing of a Falcon 9 first stage back at LZ1 in Cape Canaveral, Florida. This is great news for everyone here at SpaceX. This is exactly what we try to do with all of our rocket, or most of our rockets now these days. So while we all are very excited about this successful landing, it's important to note that the main objective today is still not complete. On the right-hand side of the screen, you can see that second stage continually accelerating itself and the Dragon spacecraft towards the International Space Station. So hopefully we'll get confirmation that the second stage engine cutoff is about to happen soon. This is when that second stage engine finishes its main burn, finishes accelerating a Dragon most of the way towards the ISS. And then after that burn is complete, the Dragon will then separate from the second stage and then begin its own preparations as it goes towards the ISS. Now, the Dragon doesn't go straight to the International Space Station. It actually has a 36-hour maneuvering period from separation until it hits the ISS. You can visualize this as us catching up with the ISS as it orbits around the Earth. As you can see from this animation, the ISS circles the Earth at low Earth orbit. And then what we do is we launch the Dragon from Cape Canaveral in Florida. That first stage separates and comes back for a landing, as it just did. The second stage burns again and accelerates the Dragon towards the ISS. And then the Dragon pops off and separates from the second stage. Deploys its solar panels like it will in a few minutes. And then over the next 36 hours, thrusts very incrementally and slowly as it gradually boosts its orbit closer and closer to match that of the ISS until the robotic Canadarm can grab it and pull it in. And so we just had confirmation of a good orbit and a second stage engine shutdown. This means the Dragon is exactly where we plan it to be, where we wanted it to be in orbit. This is fantastic news. It's still not quite done yet. We have a few other events coming up in quick succession here. The first is going to be Dragon deployment. On the right-hand side of your screen, you can see a camera pointing from the top of the second stage up into the trunk of the Dragon. We should be able to see that. Oh, there it goes. Dragon has successfully deployed. this is big news for the crowd down there. It means the Dragon is happy and in orbit. In about 1 minute from now, the protective covers on either side of the Dragon's trunk, which carry its solar panels, are going to pop off in about 30 seconds. And those solar panels are going to deploy so the Dragon can charge its solar panels on its way to the ISS. Right now on your screen, you can see that second stage engine nozzle after having completed its mission of bringing the Dragon to a low Earth orbit. So we may not have telemetry from that second stage, video telemetry, all the way until the solar deploy. Solar array deploy should be happening in just a few seconds right now, but I can't guarantee that we'll have a good enough link to have video of it. So we're just standing by to get confirmation from Dragon that the solar arrays have deployed properly. Oh, there it is. There's a shot of those solar arrays before deployment. Got about another 40 seconds before those solar arrays deploy. Right now, it looks like this is a view of a camera mounted inside the solar array compartments. Deployment should be any second now. And there it is. As you can see, those are the solar arrays of Dragon slowly unfolding. Looks like a successful solar array deploy. Dragon's propulsion system is also primed and ready to thrust its way towards the ISS.
How low is per unit expected?
Those solar arrays allow the Dragon to stay topped off on its batteries in a 36-hour journey to the International Space Station. Now, Dragon's journey to the space station is right now far from over. Dragon has about 36 hours of slow maneuvering, inching closer and closer to the space station until it's close enough to be grabbed by the robotic Canadarm on the station. However, while Dragon still has a long way to go, this is going to bring our webcast to a close today. Thank you so much for watching. We'd like to thank our customer, NASA, for allowing us to perform yet another commercial resupply services, our 12th here at SpaceX. We'd like to thank the viewers here for tuning in, the FAA and the range. Today we had a successful launch right on time at 12:31 p.m. from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. We had a successful stage separation, a successful landing of the Falcon 9 first stage, and a successful Dragon deployment from that second stage. Please keep in touch with SpaceX on our social media feeds and also spacex.com so that you can follow Dragon's progress to the International Space Station over the next 36 hours. Thank you so much for watching.
3, 2, 1.
Go for launch.
Vehicle is supersonic. Stage separation confirmed. Dragon, separation confirmed. Stage 1 is transonic. Landing legs have deployed. And Falcon 9 has landed.
Good evening. My name is Kate Tice, and I'm the Quality Systems Engineering Manager here at SpaceX. Thanks for tuning in as we attempt our 180th overall SpaceX launch, set to lift off with 54 Starlink satellites from Florida's Space Launch Complex 40, which you see there on your screen. If you've been following along with our launch schedule, you'll know lightning and poor weather forced us to stand down from 3 other launch attempts this week. The weather officer once again held a briefing around T-minus 40 minutes and indicated that we're currently at a 60% chance of violating launch criteria tonight. However, that is an improvement over the 90% chance of violation we were given yesterday. All of that being said, we are currently no-go on weather, but we do plan to run the clock down to T-minus 30 seconds to see if those conditions can clear up in time. The teams are currently tracking no issues with Falcon 9 or the spacecraft, and the range is green for launch, and we are proceeding with a T0 of 9:15 p.m. Eastern Time. With liftoff in just 4 minutes from now, we are standing by for TE retraction. And there we just heard the call out that TE retraction is beginning now. Those clamp arms at the base of the fairing have already opened. Falcon 9 is underway with propellant load, which began at T-minus 35 minutes. RP1, or our rocket grade kerosene, is complete already on both the first and second stage. LOX loading is still underway on both stages. First stage will wrap up in just about 20 seconds from now, and second stage will wrap up its LOX load around T-minus 2 minutes.
Stage 1 pogo. Stage 1 LOX load complete.
And there we just heard the call out that LOX load is complete on first stage. So the first stage is now fully loaded with RP1 and LOX, and we are awaiting completion of LOX load on the second stage, which will wrap up in about 30 seconds.
Launch director in the countdown net. We're continuing the count at this time. We've received our last weather update indicating the weather will be no-go through T0. We'll continue until just below T-minus 1 minute, at which point we'll end the attempt.
So there we just heard the launch director reiterating that weather conditions are still currently no-go, but we intend to run the clock down in an attempt to
Stage 2 LOX load complete.
in an attempt to once again thread the needle. And there we just heard the call out that LOX load is complete on stage 2. So at this point in time, Falcon 9 is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of fuel and liquid oxygen.
Hold, hold, hold.
Launch abort auto is running. This will be a scrub for tonight's launch attempt. Let's go ahead and set up for a 24-hour recycle. Next attempt, Saturday evening.
And there we just heard on the nets that we are standing down yet again from today's launch attempt due to bad weather conditions. The vehicle and payload remain in good health, and our next launch opportunity is Saturday, September 17th at 8:43 p.m. Eastern Time. As always, thank you for tuning in, and we hope to see everyone back again here tomorrow for our next attempt. Have a good night.
Vehicle is supersonic.
Stage separation confirmed. Dragon, separation confirmed.
Stage 1 is transonic. Landing legs have deployed. And Falcon 9 has landed.
Hey everyone, my name is Shiva Bharadwaj and I'm a space operations engineer here at SpaceX. And on your screen is a live view of our Falcon 9 rocket at Space Launch Complex 40 in Florida, set to lift off at 7:32 p.m. Eastern Time with our next batch of Starlink satellites. Now the teams are currently tracking no issues with the vehicles or the spacecraft. Weather and the range are both green for launch and we're ready to support liftoff just under 5 minutes from now. Now to get ready for liftoff, we're standing by for retraction of the transporter erector. And we'll be seeing, we just heard a call out there for that. Keep an eye out on the clamp arms near the top of the second stage. There they've begun to open. Next, we'll begin to see that structure to the left of the vehicle begin to slowly pull away. That's known as strong back retraction. And there's a great shot of the full Falcon 9 at the very top. Two flight-proven fairing halves carrying our 52 Starlink satellites. They're sitting on top of our second stage, and then below that, our first stage.
Stage 1, box load complete.
So with that call out at about T-minus 3 minutes to liftoff, Falcon 9's first stage is fully loaded with both rocket propellant 1 and liquid oxygen. We'll hear a similar call out for completion of liquid oxygen load on the second stage. That happens usually around T-minus 2 minutes.
Stage 2 locks throttle back.
That last call out indicating we're coming up on completion of LOX load on the second stage.
Stage 2 locks load complete.
And with that, we are completely loaded with propellants on both the first and second stages. That's about 1 million pounds of both fuel and liquid oxygen.
Alright guys, close outs.
You'll see a little bit of venting here. That's normal as we clear out the lines in the strongback. And just noting here that the booster on your screen is flying for its 4th time today, having previously flown the SES-22 and 2 previous Starlink missions. We will be attempting to recover this booster after liftoff and stage separation on our drone ship named A Shortfall of Gravitas, and you can see it out there on the Atlantic Ocean.
Falcon 9 is in startup. LD, go for launch.
And with that, we're on our way to liftoff just under 40 seconds from now.
T-minus 30 seconds.
Mm-hmm.
15 seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff of Starlink 435. Go Falcon 9. Recovery. Stage 1 chamber pressures are nominal.
And with that successful liftoff of our Starlink satellites and on our Falcon 9 vehicle,
Power engine telemetry nominal.
from Space Launch Complex 40, lifting off at 7:32 p.m. Eastern Time.
Falcon 9 is supersonic.
So with that call, we have Falcon 9 now traveling faster than the speed of sound. Seeing a great shot of the engines on the first stage. And that call out there indicating we are through the point of maximum aerodynamic pressure, the highest stresses that the vehicle will feel during ascent. Now coming up in about a minute, we'll have 3 events happening back to back. The first of those is main engine cutoff, where we'll shut down all 9 of the Merlin 1D engines on the first stage, followed by stage separation, and then second engine start on the second stage. And a great view of the first stage there. Now we're looking up at the second stage.
And Miko. Stage separation. Invac ignition.
Fantastic. So main engine cutoff, stage separation, and Merlin vacuum.
Confirmed.
Start, and there was fairing deploy as well. You can see those fairing halves on the left-hand side of your screen, as well as the grid fins on the first stage deploying. Now we will be attempting to recover both of those fairing halves. Both of them are for their fifth and fourth flights. We just had a glimpse there of the sun reflecting off those fairing halves. There you can see the fairing halves reflecting some sunlight as we're heading up to orbit. Left-hand dot is the engine on the Merlin vacuum. I believe the middle object is our first stage, and then the fairing halves around it. Seeing some periodic nitrogen gas bursts on our first stage as it's reorienting
On a normal trajectory.
for its next major activity, which will be the entry burn. On the right-hand side of your screen, we've got our Merlin vacuum engine continuing to burn as it's taking our 52 Starlink satellites to orbit. Today's mission does mark SpaceX's 181st launch overall. The
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
The first stage on the left-hand side of your screen has previously supported 3 missions, SES-22, and 2 previous Starlink missions, today marking its 4th. And you can see that its speed and altitude are fairly stable. It's arcing its way back to planet Earth to attempt a landing. And on the right-hand side of your screen, you can actually see the curvature of planet Earth behind our Merlin vacuum engine. Now, as a reminder, we are flying Starlink satellites today, and Starlink is a satellite internet constellation designed and manufactured by SpaceX to provide high-speed and low-latency internet to people living in remote and rural locations around the globe. We are currently live in 47 markets around the world. You can see the sunlight reflecting off our first stage on the left-hand side of your screen. Its next major activity coming up, that'll be the start of its entry burn to prepare it for atmospheric re-entry and slow down.
Stage 1 entry burn startup.
So for this burn, we are igniting 3 of the Merlin engines, which helps slow down the first stage
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
as we start
Stage 1
hitting the top.
SES saved.
As we start hitting the top of the Earth's atmosphere. Now from here on, we've got enough atmospheric force where those grid fins that we saw deploy earlier will help guide the first stage towards our drone ship.
Stage 2, FTS is safed.
Second stage burn continues to look nominal. The second stage will continue to burn until the point right around the time where the first stage will be landing. That'll be about T plus 8 minutes and 30 or so seconds.
Stage 1 transonic.
With that, the first stage is transitioning through the speed of sound. And its next major activity will be the landing burn.
Stage 2 is in terminal guidance. Stage 1 landing burn.
Startup of just a single Merlin vacuum engine. We'll see landing leg deploy as well shortly. And also keep an ear out here for second stage engine
Stage
cutoff.
1 landing leg deploy. Pico. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
So with those two callouts and a great shot from the drone ship, we've got confirmation of our second stage in the nominal orbit. And our first stage, Falcon 9, has landed, marking the 143rd landing of an orbital class rocket. This marks our 43rd launch of 2022. And there were a couple of callouts there as well for nominal orbit insertion. So that means that the second stage is right where we want it to be, carrying those 52 Starlink satellites. So with all of those confirmations, we're going to wrap up our launch coverage. If you're interested in following along, we'll have our nets live on YouTube, and be sure to check out our social media accounts for confirmation of Starlink deploy. Thanks a bunch for joining us this weekend, and we'll see you again real soon.
Pad is clear.
10, 9, 8.
Launch auto sequence has started.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Go for launch.
Vehicle is supersonic. Stage separation confirmed. Dragon, separation confirmed. Stage 1 is transonic. Landing legs have deployed. And Falcon 9 has landed.
Good evening. My name is Ian McCullough, and I'm a sales manager here at SpaceX. Thanks for tuning in as we attempt our 180th overall SpaceX launch, set to lift off with 54 Starlink satellites from Florida's Space Launch Complex 40. If you've been following along with our launch schedule, you'll know that lightning and poor weather forced us to stand down from our 4 other launch attempts this week. The weather officer has once again held a briefing around T-minus 40 minutes and indicated that weather is looking favorable for tonight's T-minus 0. We're currently at only a 20% chance of violating launch criteria. It does look like a beautiful night tonight to hit the Cape, so here's hoping we're able to lift off this evening. The teams are currently tracking no issues with Falcon 9 or the spacecraft, and the range is green for launch, and we are proceeding with a T-minus 0 of 8:18 p.m. Eastern Time. With liftoff just 3 minutes and 45 seconds from now, we are standing by for TE retraction. We should be seeing, and we can see the clamp arms opening up now.
Stage 1 LOX load complete.
And at T-minus 3 minutes, the Falcon 9 first stage is fully loaded with RP-1 and LOX, and we're awaiting completion of LOX load on the second stage in about T-minus 1 minute from now. We'll keep listening in for stage 2 LOX load completion.
Stage 2 LOX load complete.
Falcon 9 is now fully loaded with 1 million pounds of fuel and liquid oxygen. Today marks SpaceX's 96th overall launch from Space Launch Complex 40, and as I mentioned earlier, it's our 180th launch overall.
Ground closeouts has started.
The booster you see on your screen is flying for its 6th time today, previously having supported CRS-22, Crew 3, Turksat 5B, Crew 4, and CRS-25. After liftoff and stage separation, the booster is scheduled to land on our drone ship, Just Read the Instructions, which is currently stationed in the Atlantic Ocean.
Falcon 9 is in startup.
Go for launch.
T-minus 30 seconds. Fifteen seconds. T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Ignition and liftoff of Starlink 4-34. Go Falcon 9. Stage 1 chamber pressure.
And we've had a successful liftoff of Falcon 9 from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral, Florida. Beautiful night here at the
Falcon
White
power
Space
and
Coast.
telemetry is nominal. Q.
Vehicles pass through max Q, which is the point of maximum dynamic pressure on the rocket. We are about 1 minute to main engine cutoff, stage separation, and second engine startup. Keep an eye out for these events happening in quick succession. Main engine cutoff is where we will shut down all 9 engines on the Falcon 9's first stage. Beautiful clear night out here on the west coast, on the east coast.
Eco. Stage separation confirmed. Impact startup. Bearing separation confirmed.
And there we had main engine cutoff 1, stage separation, and second engine startup 1, followed by fairing deploy. Today marks the third flight for one of these fairing halves and the fourth flight of another. We will attempt to recover both of the fairing halves again to use on a future launch. Beautiful night out here. On the right side of your screen, you can see stage 2 is accelerating into space, while the left side of your screen, stage 1, the grid fins have deployed, and stage 1 is entering back into the Earth's atmosphere.
Acquisition of signal, Bermuda.
Again, today's mission marks SpaceX's 180th overall launch and our 42nd launch this year. And this first stage booster has flown several missions previously. CRS-22, Crew 3, Turksat 5B, Crew 4, and CRS-25.
Both vehicles are following nominal trajectories.
As a reminder, Starlink is a satellite internet constellation designed and manufactured by SpaceX to provide high-speed, low-latency internet to people living in rural and remote locations around the globe. On the left side of the screen, you can see some small attitude adjustments being made from the gas that's being blown out the side. In about 30 seconds, we'll have stage 1 entry burn startup. This is a 3-engine burn that will continue as the stage 1 enters in the atmosphere and slows it down for atmospheric reentry.
Stage 1 entry burn startup. Stage 1 STS has safed.
Stage 1 has ignited its engines and is slowing down. It's a 20-second burn.
Stage 1 entry burn shutdown.
We had a successful shutdown. Stage 1 will now coast through the atmosphere until landing burn out of the Atlantic Ocean on our and land on our drone ship. Target landing on our drone ship.
Stage 2 FTS has safed.
Just read the instructions. On the left side of the screen, you can see that stage 1 is slowing down very quickly.
Stage 1 transonic.
You heard that first stage is transonic. This means that it's traveling near the speed of sound.
Terminal guidance.
We'll look out here for in just a few moments for a landing burn.
Stage 1 landing burn.
Stage 1 has lit its one engine to prepare for our landing on drone ship. Just read the instructions.
Stage 1 landing leg deploy. TICO. Stage 1 landing confirmed.
Falcon 9 has landed, marking the 135th landing
Orbit insertion.
of a Falcon 9 first stage and the 42nd launch of 2022. As you may have heard, shortly after landing burn start, we had a successful engine cutoff. Stage 2 is now carrying its 54 Starlink satellites into low Earth orbit. And we also had a confirmation of good orbit. With confirmation of the first stage landing and successful engine cutoff, we'll wrap up today's launch coverage. If you're interested in following along, we have our nets live on YouTube, and be sure to check SpaceX social media for confirmation of Starlink deploy. Thanks for joining us this evening, and we'll see you again soon.
Thank you.